Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this decision session by the Executive Member for Children, Young People and Education, and that's me, Councillor Ian Cuthbertson. I have with me from Democratic Services, Mrs Angela Bealby, and from Education Support, Mrs Barbara Munns. Also in the room is Jane Meller, who's a member of our Democratic Services team. I'm going to deal with the items in the order on the agenda. There's been no changes announced in the last 24 hours. So first thing I'm going to ask for is any declarations of interest, which is really concerning my own declaration of interest, if any. I don't have any interest in the matter being decided this morning, although I do know one or two of the nurseries and providers in the area, but I have no direct involvement with them. So I have no declaration of any prejudicial or personal or disclosable pecuniary interest. The next item on the agenda is the minutes of the decision session held on the 19th of January 2021. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be present at that meeting, but my stand-in, Councillor Keith Ovell, dealt with the matters as he had done since last October effectively. And I therefore am proposing to sign the minutes of that meeting as a true record concerning the admission arrangements for 2022-23 school year. Are you aware of any changes that need to be made to these? No. Okay. In which case I'm going to sign those minutes on behalf of the executive member. Signed and dated, Angela, thank you. I understand we have no registrations for public participation, but Angela, perhaps you'll confirm that? Okay, thank you. Okay, our next matter to be decided is the question of early years and childcare places on Lowfield Green, which is on pages 5 to 10 of the agenda. And Barbara, I'm going to ask you to speak on this item, and then we'll have a few questions, and then hopefully we can make a decision.
That's great, thank you. So we have a new council development on Lowfield Green, and that includes a range of affordable housing, and there's also going to be a dementia care home and some other community buildings. And when we have these types of buildings, what we usually do is make a request for an early years yield to fund the creation of some new early years and childcare places, because we know there will be some new demand that comes from that development, and there'll be new parents moving into those properties. So based on a formula, we calculate there'll be 16 new early years places that are needed. Yeah. And that generated a contribution for capital at 104,000. So the approach that we take is that we promote the opportunity for existing providers within that immediate area of Lowfield Green, and they can apply for all or proportion of that capital contribution, because they might want to do some internal works to the premises, they might want to reconfigure the premises, or they could actually extend the premises as well with that capital. So we're proposing to set up an early years and childcare capital panel made up of local authority officers and early years childcare providers, and those providers would be from outside of that immediate area, so that there's no conflict of interest, and they would consider capital applications from interested providers. So the panel, they would need to consider the applications when they come through, and they would need to meet certain criteria within those applications, And they would also have to create places within a reasonable time frame as well. And we'd also be looking for places to be prioritised for the children with SEND and also vulnerable children, and particularly babies as well. So in terms of membership of the panel, we'd be expecting representation from childcare sufficiency, finance, quality improvement, inclusion and the provider representatives. So they would score and they would assess those bids against a criteria, and they would make a recommendation back to the executive member and the directorate management team for a final decision. So ultimately what we want is safe, suitable, value for money provision, and with a procurement process which is light touch, but it covers all of that due diligence that we need as well. In terms of sufficiency, within that immediate area of Lowfield Green, we've got 23 providers within that 1 mile radius. And when we've looked at the occupancy data, for the 0 to 2-year-olds, there's almost no availability. And 2 to 3s, it's very limited. And for 3 to 5s, it's limited. So coupled with the increased demand that we'll get from Lowfield Green, it's clear that we do need to increase the number of places, the supply in that local area. And we're already working with procurement to set up a bespoke and robust process that covers all of that due diligence. And we're working to have all of the process and the paperwork completed by the end of the autumn term, because what we understand is that the development is taking place in 3 phases, and the last 2 will take place in the spring and the summer, so up to August, and there'll probably be a lag with people moving into the properties as well. So the purpose of the paper today is to agree for the panel to be set up and for a paper to be brought back once the panel has made its recommendations. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Barbara. So what we've effectively got is quite a lot of pressure on the 2s and under 3s and 3s and under 5s in this range of dates.
Yeah, sufficiency is tight across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that area.
Do we have any knowledge of what providers might be able to offer at this point, or will that require a formal application to the panel?
It would require a formal application. So they would have to set out within that what the proposal, a bit more detail about the proposal.
Yeah.
You know, what the works would involve, you know, potentially including some different tender costs as well. And also whether they've sought planning permission, so we can try and sort of make that process as smooth as we possibly can. We've got enough information to make a reasonable decision.
Yeah. Okay. And past situations like this have tell us that we can do this in the time scale that we're talking about.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Good. So I see we've got a number of providers with occupancy over 79% basically here.
Yeah. We'd normally take 80% is full, actually, because they need a bit of flexibility.
Yes, I understand that.
For existing children as well.
Yeah. And of course, for staff availability as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Have we got any indication of how can I put it, providers who are already in the area who have given us an advance warning that they might be interested? Or is that sort of separated out by the formal application process?
It is, because it would be an open and transparent opportunity for every provider within that area to apply.
Yep.
So they could make single applications, or they could do it jointly. You know, it could be a joint bid, you know, between two or three providers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, I suppose the question I should ask is this is a standard rate of so much per place, which looks like, I was going to say about 6.5k per place?
That's right.
Yes, okay. Are we satisfied that that will provide adequate support for people who are prepared to provide a place in the initial few months, which is, I assume, what our support is aimed at giving them?
I would think so, yeah.
Right. Okay.
And I think the fact that they could, you know, because if they've got existing premises, there might be something they can actually do something, you know, that the economies of scale, because they've already got the premises there, it might be reconfiguration, which would be slightly cheaper to do. It's difficult to know until you actually get those bids in.
Okay. Looking forward then, if a decision is made today, how long will it take to set up such a panel and get it operational?
We could set the panel up fairly quickly. It's more the procurement process itself,
Right.
because it has to be bespoke. It's quite an unusual scenario because it's a council development. It's not a normal Section 106 development. So we are working closely with procurement, and they are going to involve legal and finance as well, because we want all the agreements to be set up ready. You know, so we've got everything in place, ready for that process to begin, but the panel very quickly.
Right. So the procurement framework is relatively straightforward to set up?
It is,
Right.
yes.
And legal are prepared to do that?
The conversation we've had with procurement is that they will take it forward to legal.
Right, okay.
So they've taken templates of Section 106 agreements and historical neighbourhood nursery agreements. So they've got something, you know, so they've got some knowledge about how we tender for early years and childcare.
Okay.
Because it's quite different, really.
Right. Okay, I think our main objective is to make sure that the tendering process is open and transparent and speedy,
Yes.
given the timescale that we set ourselves. Have we got any particular information about SEND and vulnerable children in the 0 to 5 age group that we might need to be catering for? Or is this a question of who moves into the area?
It's definitely a question of who moves into the area,
Right.
so we just don't know the ages.
Okay. Well, thank you. In which case, I can't think of any further questions that I need to ask at this point, except that I will, of course, be interested in the progress that the panel is able to make and the speed at which applications come in. But in all other respects, it seems like the process that we should follow, and that is what is needed to cater for the creation and effectively the distribution of those places across the childcare providers who are prepared to offer places in the coming months. So I agree to the setting up of a new early years and childcare panel to commission the new early years and childcare places. I look forward to a further report to consider the panel's recommendations and to give formal approval to successful bids. And I look forward to doing something worthwhile for the people of the Lowfield Green area in this context. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's nothing further for me to say except that this is the kind of development that can benefit our city and its children enormously. I hope we'll be able to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. with that matter decided, I have no other urgent business to deal with this morning. And in that case, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Jane, for turning up.